Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Just a disclaimer for today's episode. It contains open and honest conversations about sex, including reference to sexual assault and other sensitive topics. We encourage you to listen with headphones if you're in a public or shared space. Some listeners may find certain parts of the conversation to be triggering. And if you are impacted, please reach out to a trusted friend, counselor, or sexual assault support service in your area for help. Your well-being is important, and it is okay if you need to pause or step away at any time. We understand that there's so much that goes into this topic, and everyone's experience is unique. And so we are just here to educate and help you stay informed and feel confident. But if this isn't the right episode for you, feel free to move to the next. Have a beautiful day.
So if you think about it, presumably sex is a really valuable part of life.
Yeah.
What other valuable part of life do you expect to happen completely spontaneously with no planning?
Yeah.
Especially when you live a busy life. How the hell are people finding the time without scheduling it? I would like to know that. The thing is, they just don't find the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast, where we empower women with the latest insights and advice on holistic health. From cutting-edge medical research to practical wellness tips, our mission is to help you thrive at every stage of life. Join us as we explore topics ranging from hormonal balance and reproductive health to nutrition and mental well-being. Whether you're seeking solutions for a specific health concern or simply want to enhance your overall wellness, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey to better health together. This is the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. I am so excited today to talk to Dr. Jenn Bossio. She is a powerhouse in Kingston. She has supported so many of our patients through what can feel like a very complex sexual health journey. And you are our top therapist referral for that, for sure. And honestly, you've made such a huge difference in so many of my patients' lives because something that felt so scary and so personal and so intangible, but something that has such a deep impact on their quality of life, their relationships with themselves, others, etc. It's a topic that I personally don't think naturopaths or many practitioners are very well educated or versed in approaching. And the change I have seen in people who come out of your office, and you have a variety of associates as well, is just phenomenal. So yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself before I keep going on. And yeah, I'm just so excited to get into today's conversation.
Ooh, I appreciate the kind words, Sarah. So yeah, I'm Dr. Jenn Bossio. I'm a clinical and health psychologist and director of what's called the Tri-Health Clinic. So we serve all of Ontario for their sexual health needs, women and men as well, and non-binary folks. So among our team, we have an interdisciplinary team of mental health care providers from psychologists, social workers, psychotherapists, and nurse psychotherapists as well. And so I mean, I just feel very privileged. I love what we do. I completely agree, and I'm sure we'll get to this, how sex is, it is everywhere, and it's absolutely not talked about. And yet it is time and time again, all of the research points to how it is a critical part to living a good life. So that's what we're here to support.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that you and I have talked about in our many Juniper moments and conversations is how important it is to ground in evidence in some of these challenging topics, but also just to be able to pull that into a very approachable and a very empowering conversation. And I'm positive that people are going to get the best of both worlds today. So I would love to dive in and just talk about, like, what is sexual empowerment? Let's just start there. What does that word mean? Because it's to you, because it means so many things to so many people.
I mean, it's a great question. I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to feeling ownership over a part of our bodies. Like, we are so fortunate in that bodies have this built-in ability to create such pleasure and enjoyment and use that as a way to connect with other people, but also with ourselves. And so having that empowerment over this element of our body and having it be a beautiful, fun part of being a human, as opposed to what it often ends up being, which is very challenging, very deeply shame-filled, very unpleasurable. I mean, dare I even say dangerous, like in the case of sexual assault. And so having some form of sexual empowerment is like a beautiful gift if we're able to access it, and a horrible nightmare when we're not.
Yeah. So walk me through, because I think when we talk about sexual empowerment, sex positivity, all of the different words that are circulating right now, it can feel like a really overwhelming topic. And so one of the things I love to start with in these situations is what brings people into your office. Because when I'm having conversations and I'm referring people your way, so frequently people are like, I'm not going to go to talk to someone about sex. Like, this is an issue with my partner. This is an issue with pain. This is an issue, you know what I mean? Like, there's
with
so
my hormones,
many
with my
thought
age,
processes.
with my body.
Exactly. So what are the types of things people are coming in with where you're able to help them navigate that?
So the most common complaint that we receive at the clinic is low desire. So oftentimes this story of, I love my partner, I want to have sex with my partner, and yet I absolutely do not. So sexless relationships, or having sex for your partner's needs and absolutely gritting and bearing your teeth through it, not enjoying it. That far and away is the biggest reason that people come to our clinic, but it is followed fairly closely with genital pain. So there are a number of different conditions that can lead to genital pain, particularly in women. Lack of orgasm is another reason. While we don't, as a whole clinic, specialize in sexual trauma, we do have a number of clinicians who do offer sexual trauma support, and so that can be another one. Interestingly, I have an ongoing blog that I write for our clinic's website, and most recently, I wrote these 2 blog posts, and they have become by far our highest hitting, and it's, why is sex gross? And why does my partner cry during sex? People see sex on TV as this wonderful, what's supposed to be a metric of the health of their relationship or their body or their hormones. And the reality is, like, so often people are not enjoying it for like complicated reasons, but often not the reasons that they think.
Yeah. I want to go there. But before we go there, I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't talk about sex on the internet and on TV and what that is and what that's portrayed as. I would love your take on it, because I know it's a conversation that comes up a lot in my office. And I think this is something that's really important to just qualify in general. You can talk about sex wherever you want, with whatever healthcare provider you want. You may not feel comfortable and you may not want to, but it doesn't mean that it's off limits as a topic. And this is something that people bring to our offices very frequently. We ask questions about it on our intake form because it's that important.
Love that.
And they are not wanting to talk about it. And they're just, not that we push by any means, but they're kind of dodging around the subject. They're asking questions, but they don't know how safe it is to talk about it. So I think it's really important to understand you can absolutely talk about it. You can ask any questions you want. And one of the things that's coming up a lot in the last, I would say, probably 5 to 8 years, is porn culture. And this like massive dichotomy, if that's the right word, between what people are seeing in the movies as this loving point of connection, and then what people are seeing in other parts of the internet, and just not really feeling at home in either one of those and just kind of feeling scrambled. So can we just talk a little bit about that first? It's like, how long do we have? I don't know, 2 hours?
I know. There's 79 different points of what you just said that I want to touch on. So let's see what I can remember and get out in this short time. So first and foremost, when it comes to porn, well, let's go further back. What we see on TV and in media and in books regarding sex misses one key important fact, and that is that it assumes that sexual desire, which is a motivational state of wanting to engage, is spontaneous. It comes out of nowhere. However, that is not true. So even though popular vernacular, we call it sex drive, like other biological drives, like hunger or thirst or sleep, the longer we go without these things, the more we need them until we die. And that is what a biological drive is. Nobody is going to die.
For some people, it may feel like that. I've talked
absolutely. Absolutely. It can totally feel like that, like very high distress if we're not getting our needs met. But from a biological perspective, it's what we call an incentive motivation model. And what that means is we need to have incentives. We need to have fun, pleasurable outcomes in order to be motivated, in order to be in that state of wanting to engage. And so if we're walking around the world thinking that sex should be spontaneous and I should just want it all the time, and I should look at my partner and, irrespective of how long we've been together, just want to jump his bones or her bones against the wall, we're going to be disappointed because we actually need to cultivate desire, which means engaging in it in a fun, meaningful way that sets us up for success and pleasure before we even want to engage. So often we use like food and sex metaphors. They go together really well. So it's this idea of like, I'm not really hungry, but my partner really wants to go out to dinner. So I'll go out with them and then they order my favorite meal. And I'm like, I wasn't going to have anything, but give me like just a couple of your fries. And you know what? I'm just going to order a main just because now we're here and it's like really good. And I forgot how delicious this meal is. That's what sex is and how it works. So TV doesn't teach us that, which leads people to feel that the way that their bodies works are wrong. And it leads to a lot of shame. And then they go to healthcare providers because they know something is wrong. And unfortunately, a lot of healthcare providers, I know this is not you or the people at your clinic, but a lot of healthcare providers don't ask. And there's interesting research on this, especially in the world of medicine, where physicians assume that patients will ask if they need help with sex. And patients are waiting for physicians to ask because they don't want to be a weirdo and make everyone feel uncomfortable. And so at the end of the day, for any of the healthcare providers listening, it is your responsibility to ask, to open up that door. And if they don't want to, or they're not able to, or there's no point in them walking through that door, that's fine. But it is our responsibility to ask.
I love that you said that because there are a lot of healthcare providers that are listening into this, whether they are, again, nurses, doctors, naturopathic practitioners, therapists, etc. And the number of times I have talked to people, and we do a lot of work with the pelvic bowl, a lot of work with endometriosis, even outside of hypoactive sexual desire, if you want to classify it as that, which I don't love, but let's just put it there for right now. When we talk about it, I'll say, do they have pain with intercourse? Do they have discomfort? Where is there? And they're like, I don't know. How do we not know this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like lovingly.
Unfortunately.
How do we not know this? And it's such an important part of the body. But I think doctors are a representation of society just like anyone else. And I think sometimes we forget that, right? We have the same stigma, the same shame, the same stuff that we're dealing with that everyone else does. We're not that different.
And I think the added piece, all of that is true. And then that added piece of like, oh, what happens if I open Pandora's box and I'm not a sexual health expert and I don't know how to help these people? The reality is you don't have to be the one. Like that's what your clinic, my clinic, there are many other places that we can send these people to get that support, but they can't get the support if they're not asked. And the asking is the very thing that destigmatizes it. So you don't have to be a sexual health expert. You don't have to know the answers, but it is it's irresponsible not to ask. So I love that you're preaching the word. Please, everyone, just ask. Practice. It's great. It gets easier with time. And then like the relief in people's eyes and like their whole body just relaxes when you're like, oh, thank God I'm not the only one. Because so often people think they're broken.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I found is we treat a lot of men at Advanced Women's Health, and we actually have Advanced Men's Health incoming, which we're very excited about. But as a female practitioner or a male practitioner, there's a lot of fear around asking someone of the opposite gender or however they identify. And it's been so empowering for me, obviously 10 years in, to see no matter who it is, no matter their age, they're either happy to have a space or they're happy it was addressed and move on type thing. Yes. But I can't count the number of times I have been thanked in hindsight for asking a question, just because, again, it opens that space. So just to reinforce that for anyone who's like, yeah, but I'm not a sex therapist, Sarah, so I'm not going to do it. I'm not either.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, you don't have to be.
Yeah. So let's navigate a little bit back to internet, that culture.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. So a piece about porn, because there is a lot out there, and I won't go too into this, but of course, let me know if you want to go deeper, which is porn gets a bad rap, and you truly need a PhD in order to be able to sort out the good research from the poor research. Unfortunately, a lot of the research does come out of the States, and that research is heavily influenced by where the funding comes from. So whether it comes from a non-biased, scientific, whatever place,
Yeah.
or it comes from a church who is very anti-pornography, and the findings absolutely reflect that. And so when we do actually go through the research and we look at sort of the highest quality, lowest bias research,
Yeah.
the picture that it paints is that porn in and of itself is anywhere from neutral to helpful to having a good sex life, which I know can be quite surprising. And why I say
Yes.
that it depends is because it matters on your level of education watching. So,
Mm.
porn is very effective in creating a sexual response because we are very visual creatures, and it combines both visual and auditory stimulation, which we know really helps create a sexual response. However, if you go into a sexual encounter with your partner and you are expecting them to act like, look like, sound like a
Yep.
porn star, I joke that it's like learning how to drive by watching Fast and the Furious. It's not real life, okay? And another joke, and bear with me, I could get a little crass in the language that I use in the sex therapy world, but
All
my joke
good.
is you don't get to choose what makes your dick hard. Okay. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is we are just animals with
Yep.
computers, right? Like
Yep.
we are slightly more advanced apes. And so
Yep.
what we find sexually attractive, sexual turn ons, we don't choose
Hmm.
that. That
Yeah.
just is what it is. It doesn't mean anything about us. And the research also shows that just because you find it turns you on physiologically, absolutely is not correlated with wanting to engage. So,
Hmm.
common kind of drive home example for this is women across the board, when we are asking what turns you on, a lot of women report rape fantasies or sexual assault
Interesting.
fantasies.
Yeah.
Does this mean that women want to be sexually assaulted? Fundamentally, absolutely no.
Hmm.
However, our bodies can respond to these stimuli. So,
Right.
when we have this knowledge that the things that turn us on doesn't say anything about us as a person, doesn't say
Hmm.
anything about what we actually want to realistically engage in, and we simply use it as a form of stimulation, just like
Hmm.
physical touch, just like playing sexy music when you're getting engaged, just like making sure your toes aren't freezing cold. When it is just a neutral
Actual facts,
stimulation.
though, like coming with the
Yes.
facts.
Forget it, right? Sex sucks. I'm all for it, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
Just do what you need in order to get your body in a calm and aroused state. And if we go
Yeah.
into it with that, then it could be a helpful tool. Where it goes wrong is when we start using judgments around it, feeling shame around it, using porn as a coping strategy. And we do see this more in our
Hmm.
male populations where
Yeah.
don't even get me started on men and their mental health. They are not taught how to process emotions, talk about emotions, have emotions, deal with emotions. And so porn is a
Yeah.
really quick way to feel good. And if you're using porn a number of times a day or as your sole coping strategy for negative feelings, then we can start to get into problematic behavior. But that
Absolutely.
does tend to be actually more indicative of clinical depression than it does any sort
Mhm.
of like, quote, sexual perversion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That
all of
makes
this
so
to
much
say,
sense.
right? When we're comparing ourselves to it, it's the exact, we don't want to compare ourselves to like Scarlett Johansson and all of these. Like when we don't have that education in order to know the place that pornography can play and how it can
Hmm.
simply be a tool, then problems can arise. But as long as we've got that
Yeah.
fundamental understanding, it's just another tool.
So porn addictions and things like that are often associated with our male counterparts. And this is something that
Yes.
I have talked about with patients in my office. That is a huge issue because people can use it for many reasons at many points in their life, positively or negatively. And I think there is a lot of conversation similar to what you said about comparison, but I'm going to take that back and use that with my patients that women have fantasies that in no way, shape, and form they want to happen to their body. If we look at the most common, that was a surprising fact to me because in that moment, that is incredibly clear. There is a
Yeah.
fantasy, right? That you can have stimulation, you can feel a type of way about, but the thought of that happening to you is absolutely end game,
Not
right? And
interested.
so
No,
we
thank you.
look and we say, okay, well, if the same thing is true of our partners watching porn, that they're getting stimulated by something, but it's not that they want that or want you to be that. Can we
Nope.
create that separation? And I think that's a very critical reframe as people are, again, talking in offices and thinking through this, because I have heard that scenario so many
Oh, yes.
times. I
Yep.
can never be that. I do not want to be that. I do not want to do that. And therefore, I will never be enough for my partner. And so,
Yes.
why even bother? Why even
Exactly.
start? And I
Yeah.
love that as a reframe. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful in my office. I'm sure many other people's as well.
Yes, and I seriously hope so. And just for that, the male counterparts who are using it, oftentimes men do come to our clinic for like, quote, porn addiction, and it's their partners who send them in for like very good reason, because they feel all of that like insecurity and unsureness, and they just don't have that education because no one talks about this. No one talks about this.
No one
There are
talks about
so
it.
many
Yep.
websites out there and YouTube videos and giant podcasts about the dangers of porn addiction, and the evidence actually just it doesn't support it. And unfortunately, a lot of the time these people are using porn in a totally healthy way, but there is an element of our own responsibility of allowing our partner to do with their body what they're going to do, maybe coming to them with a bit of curiosity and asking questions. And okay, is it that you want to do this, or is that just a tool that you use to engage
Yep.
in a pleasurable activity with your body? And it means nothing about us. And then if it does become a bit more problematic or a bit more compulsive, or it is happening sometimes multiple times a day,
Yeah.
that's probably depression. And the
Yeah. It's
good
coping
research
skill.
out there does show that it is likely actually that these men are depressed, but they have no better coping strategies. So
Yeah.
that's a piece just to kind of assess for or keep in mind.
Yeah. No, I think that's so, so key. I love that. Today's episode is brought to you by none other than Advanced Women's Health. If you are interested in diving in deeper to your health, if you are finally ready to feel like yourself, and you are finally over hearing everything's normal, everything's fine, and you want a deeper dive into your healthcare, then we are here to help you. We are currently helping patients in British Columbia and Ontario, Canada. But don't worry, if you're in another province, still reach out, get added to the wait list as we expand coast to coast. We cannot wait to work with you. Check out the show notes for more information on how to get started. Let's transition to the libido conversation, because
Please,
I
let's
know
do it.
many people listening in, this is what they want to understand more. I would say probably somewhere between 70 and 80% of people who fill in our intake forms indicate that they have low libido for them. This is self-described. And I always tell people that. I don't love the like low, I'm happy with it, high. I don't love that rating, because it means very different things to different people. For some people, I was talking to someone not too long ago and she was like, my sex drive is really low. Like I'm only having sex 5 to 6 times a week. Like I'm really concerned about this change in my body. And I was like, give her, girl. I love this for you. But to her, it's a concern, right? It's a change in something that's different. And so I think we honor it no matter what it is. But just to reference, like the amount, at least I think you're the expert, but the amount of times you're having intercourse or want to have intercourse isn't necessarily low, medium, high. In my mind, it's just what feels right for you, right? Because people always ask me, what's the average average number of times people have sex in a week or a month? I was like, why does that matter?
I know.
Like
Early in my career, I would give them answers. And I will also tell you, like, that's a really hard answer to get from research. So early in my career, I would try to give, and then you'd see people like, okay, I'm doing better or worse than average. And now I don't even engage in that question. It's just what works for you, what works for your partner, and can we find some sort of middle ground?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's dive into libido. Walk me through.
Let's do it. So there is a difference between sexual desire and sexual arousal. And what I was talking about earlier, there is this misnomer that those are the same thing. So if I'm turned on, I want to have sex. Or that it comes first I want to have sex, and then I have sex, and then I get turned on. And this was actually a way of understanding what we call the sexual response cycle for years and years and years. But that changed. And so with leading research, all of the data is supporting the fact that it's actually flipped. So it actually takes engaging in sex and intimacy, pleasurable, intimate activity in order to want it. So
Mhm.
going back to that, is sexual desire spontaneous or is it triggered? It's not spontaneous. And I will tell you, we don't have evidence to support that that doesn't exist for anyone. Okay. So
Mhm.
what I mean by that is some people are, well, when I was 16, I wanted it out of nowhere. It was spontaneous, or often in the beginning of a relationship, it is spontaneous. It comes out of nowhere. And until I have the data to tell me I can absolutely fight that off, I'll leave it in as a possibility. But my understanding and the understanding of the leaders in the field is that even in those instances where it happens so fast and so easily that it feels like it comes out of nowhere, it's probably because we are doing a lot of things that we don't realize, right? In the beginning of a
Mhm.
relationship, there's so much novelty. There's no time for our brains to form like these very predictable patterns that happen in sex. First, you do this, and I do that, then a little
Yep.
bit of this happens, which our brain kind of tunes out from and can be less sexually exciting. But think about it. You go on like the first, second, third date with somebody. Are you not perhaps making sure that your bedroom is extra clean? Like, dirty underwears aren't
Yeah.
on the bed just in case. Or you're
Yeah.
wearing like a matching lingerie set by some chance instead of the old ones with a hole in it. Like, it's effortful. You're cultivating desire. And so
Mhm.
move forward in these longer term relationships. What happens is we do so little to cultivate desire. In fact, we do the opposite. We sit around and we wait for it. We say, well,
Mhm. On
I'm just
opposite
going to
ends of the
sit.
couches with our phone.
Exactly. And like, well, when desire hits, I'll put this phone down. It's never going
Yeah.
to hit, right? We
Yeah.
need to put the phone down or flash up something fun on that phone and cultivate, build that desire. And oftentimes it means actually engaging and building arousal, physical, sexual arousal, or even mental arousal by
Mhm.
engaging in sexual activities before we're like, oh, yeah, no, turns out I do want this. And so when we're
Mhm.
living our lives assuming that sex and desire should be spontaneous and it isn't, I can't tell you the number of people that come into our office with this very deep shame, feeling like they are broken when in
Mhm.
reality, their bodies are doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They're just not getting any incentive to engage.
Mhm.
And that desire
Yeah.
never turns on.
Yeah. I think that in of itself solves so many problems. And this is
It
probably
really
again a
does.
crude question. And I don't know how you feel about me asking this question. But one of the things, especially when we're comfortable with a patient, we've addressed a lot of physiological things. We're like, okay, you know what? This is your priority. Let's talk about it. I'll literally say, when was the last time you grabbed your partner's ass? And they're like, what? What? And to speak to your point about connection, I think when we're new in a relationship, you're like, touching each
Yeah,
other,
all
you
over
know what
each
I mean?
other.
Like you're looking for connection physically, emotionally,
Yes.
like you're just this constant game of
Hmm.
contact connection because you can't let that person float too far away because you don't trust the connection. And I always say, like, I think there's something to that, right? Where if that connection is always a little bit held a little bit closer, plus there's all the novelty. And like you said, the mind games of going on the date, you don't live together, you don't have to think about it. I
Mm.
think that's a piece of it as well, because I'll ask that question. And so many of my patients are like, years? You know what I mean? Like, why would I do that? I'm like, okay,
Right.
well, it's not going to spontaneously come out of nowhere, right? Like, it doesn't need to be grabbing your partner's ass. That's, again, a crude statement, but just when is the last time there was that contact or that play or that
Right.
connection in a different way? What are your thoughts on that? You can be
Well,
honest. You can
unfortunately,
be like,
yeah.
nah, girl.
Love that. Love asking about ass grabbing. And unfortunately, the answer that we often get, and this is a little bit biased or stereotypical in terms of the genders, but often what we see is that male partner tends to have slightly higher desire in hetero
Mhm.
relationships and women tends to have slightly lower. And there are a number of different, not so much biological, but like social reasons why that happens, right? Women tend to hold a lot of the like hidden burden in the
Yeah.
household. But women say, well, I won't grab his ass because if I even touch him, if I even look at him, if I even hug him, he's going to think that's an invitation and I'm not interested. And so then what
Yeah.
becomes so sad is that these partners like all of the little bits of intimacy that could be leading towards cultivating desire disappear. And then they really are sitting on opposite sides of the couch and they
Yeah.
haven't touched each other in 3 months. And so there's a lot that needs to happen to create a sense of safety, because
Yeah.
fun sex is also not like you just want to give your partner a hug because you've had a hard day and suddenly you feel
Yeah.
like their erection hitting you and they're like
Yeah.
flaring their nostrils at you. That might
Yeah.
not be the safest form of connection. So,
Absolutely.
interestingly, sometimes the way we deal with that in sex therapy is we actually take sex off the table. And we say,
Mhm.
sorry, guy, like you can blame me. I'm just like the big bad sex therapist here, but we're going to take it off the table so that we can come back together and we can cultivate the sense of connection and safety. Let's say put a lot of deposits into the like intimacy bank account so that
Yep.
we can start to get ahead of things and start to build up that desire. And that can be really helpful, but there's that safety that needs to be established first. So, and
Yeah.
then we move forward and you know what? You want to grab ass, have at her.
Yeah.
And it could be a fun back and forth game too, right? Like, ooh,
Yeah.
we can't have penetration tonight, but maybe we can engage in other forms of play because sex isn't just
Yeah.
penetration. So,
Absolutely.
all of these different things to consider. It's different for all people. And I will also say, if you're a woman listening and you are the person with higher desire and your
Mhm.
partner, male or female, has lower desire, you are also absolutely not alone in that too, right?
Not at
Same
all.
sort of idea. But either way, we have this idea that both parties should have the same level of desire at the exact same time, all of the time. And that almost never happens, right?
No.
It's like assuming you
Yep.
should be the same amount of hungry at the same time every day for the exact same food. And it's like, you know what? I love sushi and my partner just wants to eat Domino's pizza. And like,
Yep.
okay, we got to compromise. We got to find a way to deal with that. And we talk
And
about
you
it and we do.
you talk about it. I think that is such a
Yes.
key thing. And you talk about it.
Yes.
There are so many of those, again, like social media, Instagram reels, where something happens, right? She looks at him, this, that, and the shirt's off,
Yep.
this and that's happening.
Yep.
And I'll always say to patients, like, look at the comments there, right? You see like how many people are in the same boat. No one's having these conversations. That's why everyone's joking about it and sharing it on social. It's because so many people feel in that same boat. And so you
Yes.
oftentimes do, especially because there is so much to unpack. There's so many rejection, seeking cycles, all these types of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You need someone else in the room. Most often, I find, to
Yeah.
start that conversation when it feels like it's a breaking point for you. And I know many
Yes.
people, it does feel like it's a breaking point.
Oh, unquestionably. Yeah. And I think it really keeps coming back to this sense of like, we feel broken and we feel shame, right? And
Mhm.
shame lists, or it exists in isolation. As soon as we start talking about it or reading comments with somebody who feels the same or talking to our partner, even, it immediately starts to reduce the shame. But while we
Yeah.
are caught in that shame of there's something fundamentally wrong with me, it's nearly impossible to move towards another person and invite intimacy into that. So talking
Mhm.
about it does so much more than just like, strategize or allow ways to strategize with your partner. It actually helps you feel less broken, less alone, and it makes you more able to come forward and
Mhm.
invite connection into your life. So talking about it is so important. And it gets easier with practice. I will say that.
Like everything else,
Like everything, go
right?
figure. Weird, it's not
Exactly.
unique.
Exactly. And I would actually love to know your thoughts on this, but I'll take it in a different direction and come back. I see so many women with kids under the age of 6, right? And I always say, how do you approach your child when they're struggling to have a conversation with you? You are not coming to your kiddo being like, what's going through your mind? Like, just tell me,
Yeah.
right? You're navigating it, you're making space for them, you're sitting there. Now, not everyone does this. That's fine. This is how I choose to parent, but it's a conversation. When you're face to face, you're looking at them and you're saying, okay, this is going to be hard, but like, we got to work through this, right? We can't just sit here in this state forever. It is going to be uncomfortable, but we can do this. And then it gets easier for them, it gets easier for you, and you move forward. And
Mhm.
not to make anything infantile here, but I think we give so much grace to smaller humans. We give so much grace to other people. We don't give that grace to ourselves and sometimes our partners. And it's so important to start at that place. I always say, just like
Mhm.
give it grace. Just give it grace. You don't need to give it space. You need to give it grace. And it's oftentimes challenging, though.
Yes. And to your point, right? Like children are so often, it's a conduit towards self-compassion. So if you ask,
Mm-hmm.
how would you speak to your child about it? You would do it with a lot of like care and tenderness and compassion. And that's exactly what we need to give to ourselves in order to unhook from these shameful, quote, I'm broken thoughts. So I think you're
Mm-hmm.
right on the mark with that.
So you're talking about shame. I love Brene Brown for this. Yeah, I love her work. Do you have any resources or things that you're frequently supporting people with, giving people that can be helpful in that first step?
I mean, just the very act of talking about it is really helpful. And Brene talks a lot about this as well. There's a whole field of interventions called mindfulness self-compassion. So Kristen
Mm-hmm.
Neff and Chris
Yeah.
Germer are kind of the two people that have spearheaded that. And so that entire field is we are very mindful. So first, we're very aware of, let's say, the crap that our inner critic is telling us and all of the very cruel, mean things that we all have, that inner critic
Mm-hmm.
inside of us and what it says. And then the second step is to then treat ourselves with kindness, right? Remind ourselves that we are not alone in this. We are not the only ones who have ever felt this. In fact, many people have felt this exact same thing as what we're feeling. And then meet ourselves with that tenderness. And that, and again with the research, but it has been shown to be super, super effective in helping to reduce shame. And the fun thing I love about this too is when we practice mindfulness, self-compassion, we actually become more productive and the quality of work that we produce is better. So if you've got some of the like type A high producer folks out there who often do really suffer with
None
low
of
desire
those.
because there's so much stress, right? That like sex and lust and desire cannot exist when we're really stressed out. And most of us are living our lives with like a
Mm-hmm.
baseline 7 out of 10 stressed out. So if we could find a way to reduce that is like yet another pathway into helping to cultivate more pleasurable sexual experiences.
Let's talk about that. Let's stick there for a minute because this is a
Mhm.
conversation that comes up multiple times a week in my office. So I
Mhm.
can only
Oh, your
imagine.
sorry, your clients are stressed out? Is that wow?
Yeah, yeah, I
What's
know.
how
Shocker.
surprising.
We go on like the busy women angry hormones conversation. But
Love that.
and I always talk to people about the fact that stress isn't just mental emotional, it's physiological, right? It's inflammation in
Yeah.
the body, it's blood sugar imbalances, it's all of these things. But when we look at the relationship between stress and intercourse or desire, let's just talk about desire. What does the research tell us? Because the number of people that I have confused about that, and they're like, no, people have told me that's just an excuse. People have told me that's not true. First and foremost, I care about people. I care about you. But I would just love to be able to put that on the record. Like, what do we know to be true about that topic and the relationship between those two things?
Fairly simple. So we know that we have two systems. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which is basically the stress response, the gas pedal. And then we have the parasympathetic system, which is the calming response, the brake pedal. Sexual arousal can only exist when our parasympathetic nervous system is on. It cannot exist when we are stressed out. If you think of it from an evolutionary perspective, it's just helpful, right? If we are in a threat situation, there's a saber-toothed tiger running at us, we're not going to be running and then be like, hold on one moment, Mr.
I
Tiger,
would
like
just
I'm
love an
just
orgasm
gonna,
right now.
yeah, exactly. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna
Yeah.
happen.
That would make
And
me
so
feel
it's
better while I'm dying.
I mean, that'd be
Take me down.
great. That'd be a good way to go out, but physiologically, it's so unlikely.
Yeah.
And so we need to be in a calm state. We also need to be really present. So I talk about this often when I'm teaching folks. This is another male example, but I think it drives the point home really well. When I was doing my PhD, I was looking at sexual correlates of neonatal circumcision, which is like a whole other podcast. But we get people into the lab and we were testing sexual arousal. And in order to do that, or actually, we were testing genital sensitivity. In order to do that, people needed to be not aroused. No erections were allowed because erections or sexual arousal actually decreases sensitivity, which at first I thought was weird. But this is why, for example, treating women with genital pain, the more aroused they get, the less pain they feel. So if they could get over that
Mhm.
hurdle and have like really good, enjoyable sexual arousal, their pain often decreases. So if arousal did happen, which it could, we would say, okay, please count backwards out loud in multiples of 7. Go right ahead. And those erections disappeared in less than 1 second. Okay.
Multiples of 7. I'm like, what do you mean? Like
I don't know.
7, 14,
I could use
21, 28?
counting backwards. I can't even do that. So from 700, count backwards in multiples of 7. I can't do that with
done.
every ounce, every neuron firing in my brain.
No.
Okay. Because 2 things are happening. One is the obvious, what we're talking about, is it's very stressful. They're like sitting there counting backwards. Oh God, I don't want to sound stupid. It's highly stressful. Bam, kills arousal. But the other piece is it's also really distracting. So we were talking about porn as a tool to enhance sexual pleasure. When you're really distracted, you're not paying attention to any stimuli at all. And so that also kills a sexual response. And both of those things are very important for our beautiful women who we are seeing clinically, because so often they go into an encounter, they just finished putting the kids to bed. They're stressed out. They still have to make lunches for tomorrow. They like have a big meeting at work the next day. Partner looks at them in the eyes, nostrils flaring. They're like, okay, here we go. They are stressed to the max. So there's no way that arousal is going to happen. And they're also doing a laundry list of all of the things that have to happen next. So they're not attending. They're not mindful to any of the fun, sexy touches, smells, tastes, anything that could be turning them on.
Like,
so
let's go.
We got to have both. Yeah. We have to be present and we have to be calm. And that also can take practice, because if we live a life where we're constantly a 7 out of 10, you don't just snap your finger and bring it down to a 2 so you're low enough for arousal to happen, right? And unfortunately, a lot of women do. They'll engage in sex anyway, even if it's not pleasurable, even if they're not present, even if they're very stressed. And then it's extra painful, or it's really not pleasurable, or they have no positive outcomes, so that the next time it's their anniversary, they're like, ugh, I don't want to do this. This was not fun for me. And unfortunately, sex can be such a beautiful, fun, connecting, delightful part of being an adult human being. And they're missing out on all of that because nobody told them otherwise. And that's not fair.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you can start to build that negative association. And that's something that I've talked to a lot of people about, right? Is if you have a stress response every time you see the nostrils flare, then like you almost need to step back.
Yes.
Have a conversation, which goes back again to here's what my body just did. Here's how I just responded when you did that. I know you didn't intend to. It's not that I don't want to connect with you. It's just that was a reaction. That was a look. That was something that created this response. And we need to like backtrack. Here's what feels safe, et cetera, et
Here's
cetera,
what you can do to help me, right? Because partners also aren't mind readers. Here are things that we can do moving forward. I'm actually a huge proponent of scheduling sex, which I know people are like, yeah, don't schedule it like that. That kills the spontaneity.
There is no spontaneity.
I'm not interested.
I'm surprised.
Yes. So if you think about it, presumably sex is a really valuable part of life.
Yeah.
What other valuable part of life do you expect to happen completely spontaneously with no planning?
Yeah.
Especially when you live a busy life. How the hell are people finding the time without scheduling it? I would like to know that. The thing is, they just don't find the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you might not need to say Thursday at 7 it's happening. Although I do work with many clients where they do have to say Thursday at 7, because get the kids out of the house and get a babysitter and set the mood and like do a little, personal care. Make sure you showered that morning and play some nice music and make sure the dog's got a Kong and is in the cage and isn't sitting at the end of the bed staring at you, right? Like it actually does take preparation. And if sex matters to you, which presumably, and we know it's a really valuable part of life, or if you're interested in making it a valuable part of your life, realistically, you have to plan it, and that can make it awesome.
Yeah.
And okay, fine. If you don't want 7 o'clock, say Saturday afternoon or something, but if you and your partner are on the same page, and then the added benefit of that is you can start positively anticipating it, right? Send a little fun text, read a little fun book beforehand, get yourself ready and excited. And again, cultivate that pleasure knowing, ooh, Saturday is when we're, gonna have our fun time together. And I'm excited for it, instead of oh, Jesus Christ, it's 9:30. And I don't know about you, I have early bedtimes and it's so late and I can't
early bedtime. And we have a cutoff. My husband knows if it takes 9:01 to talk to me, don't come with you near me. It is an absolute hard boundary. The other night I woke up to pee in the middle of the night and he was like, he doesn't edit this podcast anymore. So But he was just like, is this my opportunity window? And I was like, I will cut you. Like, actually, I will. So I think
I'll go to
it's
prison over this. Yeah.
exactly like, actually, I would go down, no questions asked at that time of night. But I think it is very important to that point to have boundaries,
Yeah.
right, in place
Yeah.
around those types of things. Because, and this is something that I've said to patients before, is if you're dating someone, there's boundaries without spoken. If you're
There's no
not
plan.
living with
Yeah.
them, you know what I mean? You do not have to worry Wednesday at 2 a.m. when you go to pee that there is any type of emotional response around that because they're not there. And as women, at least I see, especially with the ones who are 7 out of 10 all the time, their relationship with boundaries is so poor. So why, if you don't have boundaries anywhere else, would you expect to be able to communicate that there easily? And so I think just as much as we need that relationship around like invitation and cultivating that desire, I think we also, again, to go back to safety, need that space
Yes.
of like, I know in this environment, we're good to go, right?
Yeah. Boundaries, it's not a way to keep people out or push people out of your life. Boundaries are the instructions that you give people you love on how to stay in your life in a
Yeah, I love
healthy,
that.
meaningful way.
I love that. So then I'll ask this on behalf of all of the ladies who ask me this on a day-to-day basis, because I would love your take. Why does it feel like, even though men and women have a similar stress response, that parasympathetic, sympathetic response, that when men are stressed, they go towards intercourse and connection and desire, and women pull away from it? Because it is a pattern. Now, correlation is not causation. We talk about this all the time in the research, but I would love to know your position on that, because that's something that I hear very frequently is, I'm so stressed. We're going through a really stressful time, and it feels like I'm just like playing tennis to like beat off my partner.
I think that is a really important question. And again, I'll talk in sort of or overgeneralizations and particularly hetero couples here for a second. But oftentimes it comes down to needs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
women, for all humans, when we are really stressed out, that is quite often a time when we need connection to know that we are safe. Okay.
Okay.
And how do the different genders get socialized in order to ask for connection? Women get socialized to talk about it. We talk all day. We talk about our feelings. We're comfortable talking about our feelings. We talk to our friends. We talk. So we say to our partner, I need to hear that everything's going to be okay. I need to hear that you love me. How do men get socialized to deal with the same thing? They don't, unfortunately, often they're not socialized to talk about it. They're socialized to be very physical. Parallel
Okay.
play. They like go out and play sports or play video games beside each other or like fix a car together. They're often not talking about their emotions. So when they're feeling stressed and they need connection, what do? They say, I want to have sex with you. So now
Mm-hmm.
you have a standoff where the woman is saying, I need to know you love me. And the man is saying, let me show you how I love you physically.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that is a total miscommunication and can be a standstill. So when we're saying like, I'm so stressed, I can't even think about sex and connection. And then we have a male partner who we know is stressed out, who's just, you're batting off for sex. I always say, flip the word for a second and change sex to love, right?
Okay.
In those moments of stress, this is the best way, unfortunately, that many men have to come towards their partner and say, I need to feel loved and safe
Mm-hmm.
and cared for and good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, asking for it in a physical show of love via sex often pushes their partner away. And so now we have this vulnerable, hurting person who's like, can you just
Yeah.
show me that you love me? And the partner's like, get out of here. And
Mm-hmm.
it is a tragedy that we see across the field. And this is nobody's fault. Nobody chose this to be the way. But this is often what ends up happening. And so this is where we kind of need to pick and choose interventionally between a couples therapy intervention or a sex therapy intervention. And often in this
Mm-hmm.
case, it is more of a couples therapy intervention than sex at all. Sex,
Mm-hmm.
once the word sex gets involved, then people have all sorts of reactions and judgments again because there's just so much stigma around it. But this very real issue that you're describing, Sarah, is unfortunately, it ends up going a lot deeper than a penis and a vagina or whatever
Mm-hmm.
sex looks like to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I I'm glad we're on the same page about that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't agree more. And I always say, like, at the end of the day, it's funny you use the word love, I use the word connection. So I was like,
beautiful.
okay, if
Same.
you knew
Yep.
your partner was reaching for connection and
Yeah.
just happened to use to want a body part to do that, then could you hold this in a different way, right? Can you have that conversation in a different way? But I do find by the time people are willing to talk about it, we like you did
So
this. For
polarized.
anyone
Yeah,
who's not looking, it's like your fists are
yeah,
together and you're just pushing back and forth. There's so much to unpack
absolutely.
that it needs to be a much bigger methodical conversation.
You're exactly right. Because I want to be very clear. The answer is not, well, just have sex with your partner if they're stressed out, right? Like, that's
Mhm.
not the answer here. It's both parties coming together to find these new patterns of connecting, supporting one another, and getting their very real needs met, whatever that looks like. Because again, sex is a part of it. And sometimes it really is like, I just want to have sex, and that's just fine as well.
Yeah.
But when one person's needs are landing as like taking something away from the other or a burden to the other person, we need to better understand what's going on there and find new ways in order to make sure that one person's needs are not burdening the other person.
Of
And it is complicated and it is nuanced, which is why I can't give like a one size fits all answer
course.
here on moving forward. But it is, I can say that our whole clinic has worked with many people and couples in this exact same scenario, not just hetero folks falling into this pattern as well. And there is absolutely a path forward. There really is.
Mhm.
But the very basic being acknowledge it, talk about it, like you've been saying, recognizing that everyone's needs are valid. And also, sometimes the way that we ask for needs aren't helping ourselves or our partner. So,
Mhm.
it's really human. Like if you are listening and finding yourself in this situation, you are not alone in this by any means, and you're not
Not
stuck
at
in
all.
this forever. There are ways forward.
Absolutely. It's funny. So, one of the things I've recommended, not even in the context of intercourse, but just in the context of relationship hygiene, as I call it, is
Mm-hmm.
scheduling a needs meeting. Because so
Love it.
frequently patients and myself included, I have two small children, right? You feel like you're just passing one thing off, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
my need is met to go to the gym, so now your need is sacrificed because you have children. My need to do
Mm-hmm.
work is met, and so your need for like peace and quiet, it feels so real so often that both of your needs cannot be met at the same time. And one of the conversations that I frequently have is to learn how to communicate what a need is. And for some people whose body shuts down when you said, "What do you need?" It can be helpful, just like it can be helpful to schedule sex and have that anticipation. It can be helpful to have it on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday night at dinner, right? Or if you have a needs night dinner where you go out, you're anticipating talking about your needs, you have your calendar up, you say, okay, how can your needs and my needs be met? That probably means you need to have Nana camps, right? Like
Yep.
my mom has, we retired her to help. We have cleaners. Now we have resources. So I want to acknowledge that. And I'm very grateful for that. We have resources, but there are pockets of time everyone can find where both needs can be met. And I think even just that conversation does so much good for helping people to stop counting. You got 2 hours and 22 minutes of golf, and I got 25 minutes at Pilates, right? Like that, I think that energy coming into any relationship, at least in my practice, I see that's a huge start of challenges with coming towards moving away, withholding,
Mm-hmm.
punishment, connection,
Mm-hmm.
which comes into all things intercourse, desire, etc.
Absolutely. Yes. Oftentimes, sex is a bit of a barometer for what is going on in the relationship because
Mhm.
it is so vulnerable. And we often do have to put our barriers down in order to connect with another person in an intimate way. And so, expecting that sex is this insular place where we can connect physically, and every other part of our life is unfortunately filled with lack of communication and resentment and anger and hurt. Those things don't, it doesn't work that way. Now, there are some folks
Mhm.
for whom it does because sex is not like a vulnerable thing, but instead
Yeah.
an outlet and very much just a coping strategy, or sex happens easier with somebody for whom you're not feeling particularly well connected with. There's variance
Yeah,
there, but for the most part, it can be a bit of a barometer of perhaps a greater issue happening within the relationship.
absolutely. Well, I could talk about this forever because I think, again, it
Me
is a
too.
topic that we just, just don't talk about and has such a huge impact on the lives of so many people. And again, I know we referenced hetero relationships quite often within this, but I would love if we could expand on that topic, or if you have any resources or podcast episodes that you've done in the past, because we have a diverse audience and connection comes in so many forms. It's not gendered, as we say. But on that note, is there anything else you want to wrap up with? Is there any other take home points? Is there any just key things you want to drive home that people know about this conversation?
I think the take home point that we've touched on a couple times here is just that starting these conversations really does reduce the stigma around it and makes us feel less broken and less alone. And have like continuing on these conversations is a really helpful way to do that. So if I've been in this field for a while and I have yet to hear anything at this point that shocks me, because we are just so human, and a
Yeah.
nice way to kind of decouple any of the stigma that we have around sex with these very real human experience is just kind of what we were talking about earlier. Replace the word sex with something else, like
Mm-hmm.
replace it with love, replace it with connection, replace it with something that isn't sex, and see if what you're thinking or saying or telling yourself still makes sense. And if it
Mm-hmm.
does, great. And if it doesn't, it's probably a signifier that there was some like weird stigma coming up around sex. And how can we undo that? So, any ways that we can find to just destigmatize this totally healthy, totally normative, totally
Mm-hmm.
human part of a lived experience, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think that's such a powerful take home, is even when you work in this world, when you think you're very comfortable with it, the other thing I always say is you never know what is going to trigger some kind of response. You could be completely comfortable and great in one environment, but it's that one look, it's that one stress response, it's that one thought process that goes through your head that's not working for you. And so just I always say to my patients, constantly challenge your boundaries, right? There's no blanket statement of I'm happy with it, I'm not. There's no blanket statement of like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
It
great, it's
changes.
not. Like, we
Context
don't.
changes, your life changes, so
Exactly.
your needs will change accordingly. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think being open to that and just constantly, if you're not happy with where you're at, or you're struggling, or you're not content, or whatever you want to call it, just always know there's spaces to get support. There's spaces to ask questions.
Yeah.
And I love that your clinic does virtual. I know, again, it's been such a huge asset to us. We have a lot of BC patients and practitioners as well. And I know you did part of your graduate studies there. So if you don't mind, if you know of any spaces, I would love to put those in the show notes as well.
Oh, happy to send you the West Coast Center for Sex Therapy. To close friends and colleagues own that. And they do a very
Amazing.
similar work to what I do. So I'll give you that for the show notes.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming,
My
Jen. It has
pleasure.
been such an amazing conversation. I think so much more of this types of conversation needs to happen. And I can't wait to expand on it further for all of our
Ah,
listeners and patients. So thank you so much again.
wonderful. My pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. And if you loved today's episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. That is how we spread this message, and that is how we are going to revolutionize healthcare in Canada for women. Have a beautiful day and be well.